For over 15 years, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by Play Now, the official sports betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets, starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show with Dave Minuk, with Ezra Ginsburg. I'm your host, Drew Mindell, here for the next couple of hours, all about the Winnipeg Jets. We'll look back at the road trip that just was. We'll look ahead to the homestand, which starts tomorrow. Dan Robertson set to join us at the bottom of the hour. Marty Biron, our good friend, at the bottom of hour number 2. But for now, the three of us are together here to talk about the Winnipeg Jets. Gentlemen, great to see you on this Saturday morning. I hope all is well with both of you.
What's up, boys? I'm loving that Clear Lake hoodie, by the way, Drew. I'm not sure if I've seen you wear that before, but I like the color scheme, and it really complements your mustache really nicely.
Thank you. 3 straight compliments from Ezzy. Sort of a little off put by them all, considering it's that early in the morning. But I appreciate them, and I'll take them with the sincerity I'm sure that they were delivered with. Dave, people in the chat are concerned the fire behind you is frozen.
That's okay. It's starting to get warmer. We're getting into spring, so I don't need a roaring fire behind me in order to bring some hot takes to this show. I'm fine with a frozen fire. It'll go along with my frozen takes. So we'll keep it consistent here on this show, and I will not be complimenting you to stay consistent with this show and my general character.
That's good. I would have been really off-put if all of a sudden I was getting compliments from both of you.
Yeah.
It'd
You'd be
very
worried.
Troubling and unsettling and everything under the sun. The Jets, 3-game road trip. It's funny. A sign of a good team. 3-game road trip. I wouldn't say that in any of the 3 games they played particularly well. They played fine. It would be how I would describe their play for the most part.
But they didn't play particularly bad either, right?
No, well, in Vancouver they did, certainly. But again, I would describe the play as, not at their peak, not at their bottom, for the most part. And they come away with, of a possible 6 points, they come away with 4 of the 6, which I guess just is sort of emblematic with what the season has been all about all along. They just keep churning it around. They just keep generating points. They find ways to win. You're down 2-0 to Seattle early in that contest. Boom, you come back. Vancouver, well, that was a tire fire all around. And then in Edmonton, a game where, again, they weren't, this is an Edmonton team that ended up without McDavid and without Draisaitl in the course of that game. And the Jets, take it to overtime and they get the win there. So a successful road trip, no question, but certainly not playoff peak performances, I would say.
No, absolutely. I think that's a good summation, Drew. I think, you're a little bit concerned about the power play, right? We know since the Four Nations tournament. Yeah. And I think it's worthy of some discussion because, for the entire season, the Jets have had the top power play, right? Mm-hmm. And since the Four Nations break, it's at 16%, 17%, something like that, right? So it's definitely a cause for concern. But like you said, the Jets didn't play particularly well against the Edmonton Oilers, and they come out with a 4-3 win, which is the sign, I think, of an elite team, or at the very least, a very good team. And even the game against Vancouver, I know, over the last few days, we've kind of gone back and forth on this, but, you remember Nick Ehlers hits the crossbar. That could have been a tie game, right? So I really didn't think it was as bad as the 6-2 score indicated.
The defensive play was. That's where they had a fall off.
Sure. Yes, there was a big fall off. That's not the type of typical Jets hockey that we're used to. Lots of uncharacteristic mistakes. We saw that obviously a little bit last game as well, even though they were all able to pull out the win. But I think, guys, at the end of the day, right, like you're very close to clinching a playoff spot. You're comfortably in first in the Central, which means first in the West. And at this point, really, it's all about the President's Trophy, right? Like, I think it's going to be, at least as far as I'm concerned, it's going to be virtually impossible for the Stars to catch the Jets at this point. It's going to require like a really long losing streak at the end of the season, which I just don't see happening, Dave. So really, it's between the Jets and the Caps for home ice throughout the playoffs, right? Like That's what you're playing for, in addition to obviously closing out the regular season the right way to make sure that you're going into the playoffs at your best, right? So that's what it's all about at this point. And, there's obviously an easier opponent coming up in the Buffalo Sabres. You don't want to overlook them. And the Jets have had some trouble.
Even if you do, they'll square on themselves.
Well, yeah, it's a good point. I mean, the Sabres have been a bit of a laughing stock this year, right, Dave? But
this decade.
Yeah, more than a decade. They haven't made the playoffs in 13 years.
Yeah. Well, we'll have Marty on later, and we'll have to talk to him about what the fan base is thinking. Because if I'm a Sabres fan these days, guys, I'm not too optimistic about the future. Like, they've got some decent pieces, some decent young prospects in the system, but
culture.
It's not heading in the right direction. You look at the Montreal Canadiens, right? Like, their rebuild has gone way better
spot right now.
Exactly, right? So if you're Buffalo, you're looking at Montreal and you're saying, like, this wasn't supposed to happen. That was supposed to be us in a playoff spot, right? So you don't want to overlook the Sabres. But having said that, they've still got a talented enough roster that they could come in here and, they could surprise the Jets. Obviously, it's going to be interesting to see, Dave, if it's Comrie or Hellebuck. I think there's always the chance that it could be Comrie, but he just played against Seattle. So based on the rotation, but we are later in the season. This is exactly what we talked about, right, guys? Mm-hmm. At this point, like, you've got first wrapped up. Hellebuck, obviously, you could make the argument, that he's going for the wins record held by Brodeur and Holtby, but I honestly don't think that's. I think they stick to a schedule, and I'm with you. I think Comrie will get the start today.
It'll be.
Pardon me,
tomorrow.
Sunday.
Yeah, tomorrow, when the Jets will be on the ice at around 11 o'clock for practice this morning. They were off yesterday.
Of course, they're not going to skate tomorrow.
Yeah, and then they won't skate tomorrow because it's the 2:00 afternoon start. So we'll maybe glimpse a little bit of a suggestion. It seems like it's a very Eric Comrie-esque game, but at the same time, it's not like the schedule has been particularly heavy for the Winnipeg Jets.
Nope.
They haven't played since Thursday. They play Sunday, Tuesday, Friday, Sunday. So again, it's a quieter week in terms of it's not even every second day, and there's no back-to-backs. So what'd you say?
All at home too. So
all at home with no travel. Exactly. Yeah. So
Kramer did what?
Yeah, all the time will tell on what happens on that front. But as he touched on it, he mentioned the power play, and what has been a strength for the Winnipeg Jets all season long, and I mean, I still think is a strength. So don't think that I'm saying that the power play is all of a sudden going to be a significant problem for the Winnipeg Jets. It does bear mentioning that over the last month, because it's now been a month since the Four Nations, the Jets came back to action on Saturday, February the 22nd, against the St. Louis Blues. You remember that game there. The power play for the Winnipeg Jets has been 26th overall in the NHL over the last month. The penalty kill has been 20th as well. So, for a team that was very reliant on special teams, that sort of dried up as a little bit over the last month. The winning ways haven't, which speaks to the Jets' performance lately at 5-on-5. But it is getting to be a little bit of it's a narrative and a talking point until it gets back to maybe not the 30% highs that we were used to seeing, but maybe it needs to be back in the top 10 of the NHL, and it hasn't been there over the last month, which is a long enough time that it warrants some conversation here on the show.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that, Drew. I mean, the numbers are the numbers. They don't lie. They're not concerned about, your feelings as to whether you think something or you feel something. You can look at them and they're emblematic of what we're watching on the ice. And for right now, I think to me, what exemplified it was the lack of movement. That's and, especially when you looked at that I'm thinking of the one specifically in Edmonton when the only guy moving was Kyle Connor and everybody else was kind of stationary. And it's not what we became used to seeing from this dynamic power play, almost historic power play throughout the course of this season. So I'm not sure. I mean, again, I don't know the reason why we're not seeing that same movement that we've seen. I don't know if guys are tired, but again, I'm not in their heads as to why they're not performing the same way and in the same manner. And of course, part of it also is that, teams now have an adjustment to the Jets power play, right? And they come in with the ability to try and counter it. So, I mean, that is something they definitely have to factor, but you have to be able to counter their counter. That's the sign of a good team. And so from that perspective, I mean, clearly the Jets haven't done a great job in that regard because they, like you said, Drew, their power play has slipped from, I mean, we tend to look at it and it's like, okay, well, they're still the first power play in the NHL, or they're the, 15th PK in the NHL. But of course, it's because you have such a big sample size. It's hard to adjust that, in the sense that even when you have slippage, it's not going to drop it that significantly, that precipitously. But at the same time, you look at it, and like I said, I think it's as simple as a lack of movement. We might have to have the coach John Goins on, Ezzy, to really give us a breakdown as to what he's seeing with differences. But from my perspective, I just see that one against the Oilers, where the only guy seemed to be moving was Kyle Connor, and I think that to myself, that's not the way we watch this team play for the 4 months preceding it.
Yeah, I think you're not seeing enough of those down low plays, right? Like I've always talked about that triangulation, right? Where you work it down low and you get a situation where the guy in the bumper is an option to shoot. And then you also have the guy that's down low near the goal line, usually Gabe Vilardi,
right,
who's able to kind of do those jam plays and work those nice hands in tight. And you want to create multiple threats. You want to create odd man situations, right? And I think there's been maybe a little bit too much of that kind of, cross crease passing, a little bit looking for, Kyle Connor a little bit too much, right? Like I think they've got to get back to what was making them successful. And you're absolutely right. Teams do make adjustments, and you can see teams are trying to take away those down low plays. And, there's just too many talented players on this roster. And what I was going to say is, you wonder, guys, with the way I'm not sure if Drew was going to go there, but like, do you think with the way Cole Perfetti is playing, do you think you maybe need to work him into a different scheme, right? Like on the top power play unit, right? Like if things are struggling, why not mix up the first and second power play units? Obviously, guys, like you're not taking Kyle Connor off the top power play unit. You're not taking Mark Scheifele off the top power play unit. But I don't know, like, is that something the Jets are considering? I have absolutely no idea. But as far as what they're trying to do, I think that's not changing, right? Like we talked about it. The whole key with the Jets power play is they're trying to have multiple weapons available to them to strike, right? Whether that's the guy in the bumper, whether it's the guy down low, whether it's Kyle Connor in his spot that's available for a one-timer. That's what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to put the other team on their heels. And I think that's what the Jets haven't been doing enough. What we were seeing when the Jets power play was, what was the highest it was at, guys? 35% earlier in the season, even a little bit higher on that 15-1 run, right, Dave? So that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a power play that's not being aggressive enough. And I think they're just being a little bit too cute, a little bit too fancy. But I do think that the Jets will turn this around, guys. I really think so. I mean, with Connor and Scheifele and Vilardi and Ehlers and Morrissey out there, I think it's just too many skilled players to not have better results. But I wonder if Perfetti's a guy that gets a look on the top power play unit.
Well, I want to highlight this.
Just floating it out there. I'm not sure what you guys think about that, or the chat thinks, but I mean, with the way Perfetti's playing, why can't he be on the top power play unit?
Oh, he's playing great hockey. There's no question about it. I'd be surprised if they made a change that significant. At least sort of a more full-time change to that effect. Maybe,
sure,
spot duty here or then. But I want to highlight this comment from our buddy Doug, because I do think that, I mean, it's hard to sort of wrap your brain around that, they wouldn't always be trying to score. There's no question that they're always trying to score. But I do wonder if there's some wrinkles that the Jets are sort of waiting and holding on to when it comes to the power play. So Doug, for those on the podcast, says maybe the Jets power play is playing possum, which is a lot of P words there, but that's okay. I think
Drew, you've eaten possum before.
I actually haven't eaten possum, but maybe I hear it's a very gamey meat. I'm not sure that I'm that interested in it, but I do think that at this stage of the season, where the Jets are in their place in the standings, I don't think now would be the time to expose all your cards and play all your cards of any additional wrinkles that you're not maybe bringing to the table and expecting to launch on an unsuspecting opponent in game one of the playoffs. I don't think you need to sort of show before you need to, against the Buffalo Sabres tomorrow night. There's no question the Jets want to keep succeeding on the power play. I'm not by any stretch saying that they're deliberately sabotaging the power play or anything along those lines, but it is very stationary. It is very, I would describe as rote and predictable as of late, which makes me wonder if they are trying to incorporate some wrinkles, but they're not yet sort of showing off those wrinkles in game action. Because you're right. there's books on power plays. Teams pre-scout. We know that. There's no question that everybody in the league sort of knows what the Jets so far this season have wanted to do on the power play.
You don't want to let the Jets set up. That's the whole issue. Just like any power play, right, Dave? Any successful, dangerous power play, the opposing team is trying to make it difficult for the Jets to get those set plays going. And obviously winning faceoffs is key, right? Because we know earlier in the season, like I don't have a stat, but the Jets were scoring power play goals in the first 30 seconds of the power play, right?
Yeah.
It's been
they were scoring.
Exactly. And I think you want to see that type of quick strike mentality. We're not saying that the Jets aren't trying. It's not like the Jets are going out there and they're saying, you know what, we're not going to score this power play, or we're going to wait until a minute and a half in, Dave, to score on the power play. I mean, they're trying to score as early as they possibly can, but I think that just speaks to the Jets power play maybe not playing with as much confidence. I think that's part of it. I think you've seen some struggles on the zone entries, right? Like there's been some criticism that maybe, it shouldn't always be Kyle Connor that's coming through the zone with speed, but obviously, you see Nikolai Ehlers be the one-man zone entry as well. But I really think it's getting back to those situations where you're creating multiple options. You're having players, Dave, move in and out of the bumper spot, whether it's Velarde, whether it's Scheifele, whoever, Ehlers. You want to create those odd man situations, those down low plays, those kind of tic-tac-toe plays. Those were the plays that I think we were seeing earlier in the season that we're not seeing as much now. But I really do think, the Jets power play will get going. There's just at both units. I mean, the second power play unit as well, guys, earlier in the season was contributing. And that's something too that, maybe is worth a little bit of discussion. Sometimes that first power play unit stays out a little too long, right, Dave? Like we've clocked sometimes that first power play unit being out there, a minute 15, minute 30. And when you're talking about, guys like Niederreiter, Iafallo, Perfetti, like, it's a different looking second power play unit, but, maybe get those guys out a little bit quicker.
Well, and the one thing I'd add is that, remember, a lot of those guys that you're mentioning, the guys who are on the power play are struggling right now, right? So you've got guys like Nino Niederreiter who is struggling. You've got Gabriel Velarde who's struggling a little bit. So, I mean, you've got guys right now who the puck, it's not their friend. And, we'll see if the good assist on Josh Morrissey's goal in Edmonton gets Nino Niederreiter back to feeling good about himself. And Gabriel Velarde, I've said this, I've been watching him now for the last little bit, and he seems to be struggling. I don't know. Again, I don't think there's an injury there. I just think that he just isn't having that same sort of luck around the net that he, there's time and space, and it's in terms of adjusting. So, to me, and we're going to give a shout out to Warren because he says his wife, just for the folks in the chat, my wife says we can fly in if the Jets make round 2. Maybe you could intervene on my behalf and build a case for me. Well, Warren, of course, Warren lives in Oshawa.
Don't do legal work for less than $20 for $20, Warren. You got to step it up a little bit if you want us to do some legal.
No, guys, I'll take this. Warren, I got you. That $20 is mine.
We'll definitely advocate on your behalf to get you to Winnipeg. Of course, why wouldn't you want to come to Winnipeg? It's starting to warm up here, and I want to give a shout out.
Yesterday, holy moly!
Yesterday
was just brutal.
Yeah, yesterday was miserable, but the day before it was nice.
It's your classic boys first day of spring, and it's -20 in Winnipeg.
Yeah,
and it just came out. We don't need to delve into the weather report, but it's funny because it's back to like the normal temperatures that it had been today. It's just yesterday was that bitterly north wind, and then today it's back to normal. And next week it's supposed to be perfectly pleasant spring weather. So just
anyways,
yesterday.
But I was going to give a shout out to the chat in general. Then I saw Warren's comment. Got to shout it out. Appreciate the donation. But I will say the one thing that I love about this chat is that for the last 5 minutes while you two were blathering on about the power play, the chat has been talking about possums for the entire time. The deliciousness of possums, the different
Kentucky fried possum.
Yeah,
don't see that, folks.
I know. I saw you see it.
You like how this is the guy that stirs the chat. Dave. I'm the one that gets that chat going, talking about eating possums.
There's a reason why people all love you. You're the straw that stirs the drink. But no,
going back to the power play for a second, Dave.
I thought Drew was going to say going back to the possum.
Yeah, going back to possum meat. It's delicious. It's gamey. It's lean. I think.
By the way, is a possum like a skunk? Is that what a possum is?
I think so ish. I'm really not sure.
Like we don't have a lot of possum here in these parts.
I think we do probably just in the rural parts. It doesn't strike me as a city animal. But Dave, you travel Manitoba.
It's kind of like a cross between like a beaver and a skunk, isn't it?
Well, we have lots of beavers and we have lots of skunks, so you would think that we have plenty.
But not a lot of possum. There's not a lot of possum here in St. James.
I think the urgency.
By the way, Drew, I'm pretty sure possums are not in Manitoba, just to be clear.
Really? There's no possums in Manitoba?
It's a southern animal.
Oh, okay. Well, what the hell do I know about possums? I think the urgency.
Apparently, it's the largest marsupial, by the way.
I like in Needlers We Trust. Is this National Geographic?
What I was saying, though, I think the urgency factor, or the fact that the Jets don't have that desperation that so many teams scratching and clawing for playoff positioning currently have. I think the urgency just naturally will, depress some success when it comes to something like the power play. I mean, I think that's probably a factor as well. Now, I know that the old cliche, you can't turn it on, you can't turn it off, and everything like that. And there's probably some truth to that and some validity to it. But at the same time, I just don't see the desperation out of the Winnipeg Jets. And frankly, nor should you at this point.
Well, I mean, remember, they are the number one team in the Western Conference. They're neck and neck with the Washington Capitals, which is setting up. And again, I know we don't look past the game in front of us, but it's going to set up a great game on Tuesday night against those same Caps, and we'll see. Maybe that is the game. I mean, it's not the same as the Southeast Division when the Capitals came into Winnipeg for that back-to-back and killed the Jets' chances at the playoffs. This is just a good shot at one of those teams being a potential President's Trophy winner. So for me, though, I mean, look, the reality is this: the Jets team knows what they are. There's no question about it. They've been as again, we look at this team and there are some flaws in their game. Like if you look around the NHL, you point to me one team that isn't flawed. There isn't. Every single team has flaws. Now you obviously want to try and minimize that, right? But there are some things that the team's coaching staff is going to want to work on, and we'll see what they do. And they like you said, Drew, in about an hour and a half or 2.5 hours, no, an hour and a half, they're gonna hit the ice at Canada Life for a skate. And I suspect special teams will be something that they work on. But, this is, again, I think this is a group that isn't in cruise control, right? I think that there's that desperation to, I mean, look, they're still winning hockey games. That's the bottom line. I mean, at the end of the day, the deserve to win a meter is nice. And you can, to be able to say you win the analytics battle, that's important. But at the end of the day, in the regular season, it's about the playoffs, and in the it's about the points. And in the playoffs, it's about getting those wins to win a series. So are you doing enough? And and I know there's a question as to Connor Hellebuyck and how many more games you want to see from him. And is he starting to show cracks in his game? But he's still showing, I'll be honest with you, if you look at the numbers, even that Edmonton game, you don't like the Jeff Skinner goal. I'm not going to try and apologize for it. It's not a good goal.
That's a save that Hellebuyck makes 9.9 out of 10 times.
That's right. But if you look at the quality of the start for Connor Hellebuyck, based on the third period in the overtime, I mean, he still had a very good quality start for the Winnipeg Jets. So, I mean, again, I sometimes think people hit the panic button. You see a couple of bad goals against Connor Hellebuyck. I mean, folks, he is going to win the Vezina clean. And it's not because he did something for, 50 games, and now for the last 30, he hasn't been Connor Hellebuyck. Yeah, I mean, yes, there are some.
Connor Hellebuyck has more wins than 23 other teams.
That's my point, right? Back-to-back seasons where he's gotten 40 wins So
that's
I mean,
ridiculous.
But I'm just saying that, and Drew's right. It's not too onerous a schedule that you're okay, you're there at home. They've got 4 games. He's I suspect Comrie plays tomorrow against his old team, and he hasn't played since as he said the game against Seattle, but.
Well, and also, Dave, like we've said with the schedule, with Washington coming up Tuesday, and then the Devils on Friday, which are obviously 2 better teams, and Hellebuyck gets those 2 starts. So I think it makes a lot of sense, not just because, like you said, I agree with you, though, it's Comrie's old team, so maybe he gets a little bit of revenge, and it's on a lesser opponent. I don't think Comrie obviously needs any revenge against Buffalo, but I think it makes a lot of sense that number 1's going to get the start tomorrow.
I would agree with you. Dan Robertson has just logged in backstage, which is our cue to go to our first commercial break. When we come back, we'll ask Dan about his knowledge about the Winnipeg Jets, as well as possums in Manitoba. So stay with us, Dan. You have about 3 minutes to go research on possums. He's got his hand in his head and he's regretting joining us to begin with. But much more of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show and Possum Talk coming up next after these commercial messages. The show presented by Play Now.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling sites instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
Bottom of the hour, welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show presented by Play Now. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, Dan Robertson, Possums, talk about it, go.
Nothing about possums. I know as much about possums as I do about goaltender interference. How about that?
You ever remember the Canadian game show Talk About?
Oh, I do. That was the worst show I've ever seen.
Well, you haven't watched our show enough, Dan.
Was it Wayne Cox was the host, Drew?
Oh my God! Look at that.
Sounds
Wayne
familiar,
Cox.
Ezzy. I mean, I think you might be right about that. And you win, like, if you won Talk About, you won like a washer and a dryer because it was, a Canadian game show in the 80s, and that's all they could afford. It was a quality program.
I'm more of a definition guy with his name Jim. Oh, that's terrible. Definition. What's the tall? Jim Perry. Do you remember that?
I don't remember definition.
I'm 55, so there you go.
Yeah, you're okay. You got us beat by about a decade there. Yeah, there was Talk About, and then Bumper Stumpers. Bumper Stumpers was a clever game, but
what was the one? What was the one where they went like this and they clapped their hat? That
was Kid Street, Dave.
Kid Street. There you go.
Yeah, Kid Street, but that was a kids game show though. That wasn't an adult game show.
Well,
Drew, we were kids at one point.
That's right. They could only clap above their head like that. Dan, we've digressed as per usual here on the program, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with us. I have to say though,
I'm just looking at Dan right now, and he's like, "What did I get myself into here?"
I shaved for this.
Yeah, you shouldn't have shaved for that. I mean, but what is I was going to say, they're possums in North America, but they're opossums, I guess, in Australia, which brings us to the line of the week is when on St. Patrick's Day, you called Kevin Sawyer Kevin O'Sawyer. We thought Dave especially was really enjoying that one.
I chuckled. I liked how you slipped it in, Dan.
I'm glad somebody got it. So Connor scores and he's like, diddly dee, because I said diddly dee. So then I had to throw that in. Sometimes you talk about digress. that happens from time to time with us, but it's a long season, so I hope people forgive us for that.
No, the levity that you bring to the broadcast is, of course, very entertaining. Road trip complete, 2 wins out of the 3. You can't complain about that. The performance on the ice wasn't their peak performance. Vancouver obviously was a poor performance defensively. We spent some time this morning also talking about the power play and the struggles of that over the last month. I guess generally speaking, we're sitting here, we know where the Jets are in the standings. We know that we're down to the last, handful, maybe 2 handfuls of games before playoff time. What's priority for the Winnipeg Jets? Obviously maintaining their position atop the Central Division, atop the Western Conference, winning the President's Trophy. But from the on-ice perspective, what do you think priority is for this team?
I think more of the same. Just to go back a minute, it's funny. They're at a point, and they've been at a point all year where so they win the opening game in Seattle on the road trip, then they lose in Vancouver, then there's questions, and you think, wow, they didn't play a good game. They win the road trip. They beat Edmonton in overtime. So you look back at it, they take 2 of 3. So they've set the bar so high, I think, for everybody who pays attention to them, that if they get a little bit slower in the power play or whatever aspect of their game falters a little bit, I think we can and should give them some slack. And maybe that goes for Hellebuck too, who I didn't think had his best 2 games on the road, but in the end, it doesn't really matter. What matters, as we know, is how they're playing when they get to the playoffs. So I think, we mentioned the power play, and I spoke with Nikolai Ehlers in one of the intermissions, and which I always like doing because he's very frank. And as interviewers, when you ask someone a question, usually they answer you right away. And Nikolai will take 2 or 3 seconds, and then you're thinking, it feels like a minute and a half, and you're thinking, did I ask the wrong thing? But he said we need to keep it simple, and I'm paraphrasing, and to be a little more direct on the power play. So I think that's one thing that they want to do, and to get it back to close to where it was. And it's not been falling down that long, but I think just to what they've done all year, and I know this is an easy answer, but believe in themselves, which has helped them come back, stay in their structure, and just kind of cross their fingers, I guess, that everybody is healthy. And I'll steal this from Kevin. When they made a couple of changes, of course, they flip-flopped Biron and Lowry as far as the line combos go. And Kevin's right. He said, this is a good time to do that because things can go astray quickly in the playoffs, and you might want to, maybe you're down in a series or you're down in a game and you want to spark. It's nice to know that you had a certain line together and that you can throw them out there and maybe they have some chemistry. So nothing's settled, although it's getting closer to being settled as far as the Central goes. But I think to be able to experiment a little bit and really find out what you have now that you have a couple of 2 newish players in there. So I think those are things they should look at.
Dan, I know you and Kevin and others on the broadcast have talked a lot about Cole Perfetti, and rightly so. And I need to go there first because his struggles were well documented earlier in the season. Picked up another goal against Edmonton. Like, it just looks like it's almost like a different player, right? Like, to me, and it's just so nice to see. You love to see the chemistry between him and Samberg, obviously former roommates. But what has kind of stood out to you between the kind of 2 versions of Perfetti that we've seen this year, right? The Perfetti that was struggling to put the puck in the net to the Perfetti now who looks like one of the most dangerous Jets players on any given night.
I think, and I'm guilty of this, when he was the last couple of years when there were droughts, you start to think, okay, and I'm persuaded and swayed by where he was drafted overall. You think, is this kid ever going to be a legitimate top 6 player? And I should know better, being around the game this long, that it takes different players and different people time, different lengths of time to mature if they're going to do it. And he is doing it. You can see that he's willing now, more willing to go to the front of the net, to go to the corners. And I think he's gotten a little more direct too, where he's cut down on the sort of fancy low percentage passes, which maybe Nikolai Ehlers has done over the course of time too. So I think those things are prominent regarding what he's done. And I'm kind of chuckling because I asked Ehlers the other night, I said, why has Perfetti gotten better? And he smiled. He said, well, I think you have to look at his line mates first. And then Kevin said later, do you think he's being asked too much about Perfetti? I said, well, maybe, but I think he was, sort of in one hand saying, look at the chemistry that we have. So, and it is good. I'm so fascinated to see what happens when the playoffs come. if that line can continue to be effective. And they're not your prototypical, like there's nobody big, nobody going to steamroll you on that line. But I really hope that they can continue to play this well. And Nemesnikov's come alive too, and Ehlers can be a one-man show in a good way. I mean, he's a game breaker. But yeah, I think just that, the maturation, the going into the corners, taking a bump in front of the net. And it's funny, he scored that goal the other night in Edmonton. And this is terrible. He scored one in Vegas. I don't know if it must have been last year, but I've seen him score from that point before, where he's kind of the trailer and he's got really good vision, and all of a sudden the puck pops out and he's there. So that's not a coincidence, I don't think. I think that the better players are the ones who go to the right place. So he's got marvelous instincts, and it's good to see it come together for him right now.
Dan, I'm not going to suggest there's Eastern bias from you or Atlantic Canada bias when you're talking about Morgan Biron, but you do seem to have a little twinkle when you mention Morgan Biron on the broadcast, and with good reason of late. I mean, his move to center really seems to have helped him this season. What are you seeing from him? I mean, I know you said it on the broadcast when you were talking about the faceoffs. I think he was 5-0 or something like that. Yeah. And so what are you seeing from his move to the middle and how it's helped the team and him?
Well, I am biased. His folks are from Antigonish, which is about 45 minutes east of where I'm from. So, yeah, it's always been that way ever since I got into the league. When I would see a guy from anywhere close to where I'm from, I would light up a little bit. So I don't mind saying that. I think,
Dan, feel free to sprinkle in a little Crosby McKinnon in your answer too.
Yeah, exactly. I think that I don't want to say he's been revitalized because he's just a young guy, but I think there's been a spark there because all of a sudden you're able to show that you can do more than just be a winger, right? And and I've thought of it in the big picture. When you go to sign a new contract, you say, okay, look, I can play the wing, and if it continues to go well, I'm a 6'4", whatever he is, 6'3", 6'4" centerman who can play well defensively and shut down the other team and bring a lot of energy. So I like that. I think it's just kind of sparked him a little bit, and I think Tanev coming on and just that line being put together, I think they're feeding off each other, right? I'm sure that if you're a line mate of Brandon Tanev, you think, okay, this guy's going to fly around like this. It's going to give me a kick in the pants too to do the same thing. So, but Morgan's an interesting guy to me, an interesting case. I mean, I don't know how much offense there is there, what kind of a ceiling there is. Maybe it shouldn't matter, but there's times when you see him get up ice and he's got some runway to get the legs really moving. He's hard to get the puck from. I think he's good at cutting off the left wing and using his size and his strength and that sort of thing. So I really like what I've seen from the three of them, but to me, that's it. And I haven't talked with him about this, but there's probably an element of a new challenge, which, you know what, we can all use at our workplace from time to time, no matter what we do. So I like what I've seen.
Dan Robertson, our guest Saturday morning, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. It's presented by our friends at Play Now. From a player who's been excelling as of late in Morgan Biron to one who's been struggling in Nino Niederreiter. He obviously gets the assist on the Morrissey goal, which might help. In Vancouver, he came very close to tying the game before Vancouver transitioned the puck up the ice and scored their own goal. When you're watching Nino Niederreiter, I mean, I know I think it was Mike McIntyre wrote about it in the Free Press this week, about a guy who's squeezing the stick too hard, pressing too much, trying to get good things going. He's not, but he's a guy who's also been pretty streaky throughout his career, where these lulls aren't unusual for him. What are you seeing when you're watching Nino Niederreiter as of late, especially in the midst of these struggles?
Well, first of all, Drew, I find it fascinating that certain players are like Nino in that regard. I got to thinking last year, and I think it was actually Mitchell Clinton who said it on the bus. He said, I remember him having a bit of a down streak last year, and I looked, and his last 14 games before the last game of the year, he hadn't scored a goal. So, and Nino's not necessarily about that. I mean, at the best, he's good for 20, as we know. Excuse me, but I don't know. I wonder, maybe I shouldn't think this. Is he half a second late getting where he needs to be? Maybe that's part of it. I think, he's one of the older guys on the team. I think he's 32. It doesn't matter if you're 22 or 32. When it's not happening offensively, you do squeeze the stick. So maybe there's part of that. I think the simplicity of his game, though, can help him get out of that. They don't need him to score. We know that, but to chip in once in a while would help. But just do your work in the corners, get to the front of the net, and he's going to get one. And I know that he felt good about the assist on Morrissey's goal, and I kind of chickened out. We had him on the intermission after he set up Josh. And I wanted to say, look, why haven't you scored lately, basically? But I thought, I don't really want to do that. I really like Nino too, which I probably should have asked. But I think
he's a big man. I don't blame you for discretion's the better side of valor there.
Well, honestly, he just lives a couple of floors down, so I don't want to mess with him. Actually, floor up. But yeah,
just see him tunnel through the floor and just drop next to you right now.
That's right. Yeah, I should look over my shoulder. But I think that's it. I don't know if maybe there's a little bit of doubt in his game, and that's what's happening right now. But I think overall, the same thing was kind of going on and has been going on with Appleton, who we don't expect a lot of goals out of. But and Kevin mentioned this, I thought he had a better game on Edmonton. So in Edmonton, so the fact that Arneal switched them up maybe gave them all a kick. Not so much Lowry because he's Lowry; he's always the same. But yeah, just I hope Nino can keep it simple, and maybe if he gets one, he'll get 3 or 4 over the next until the end of the regular season.
Dan, I wanted to ask you about Luke Schenn, because obviously we talked about Brandon Tanev earlier. And, speaking of guys you're not expecting a lot of offense of, I think you'd agree that Luke Schenn is that prototypical defensive defenseman. And it's only been 5 games, but, he's already had to step up in the absence of Neil Pionk. I mean, to me, he just seems like a perfect fit on this team, right? A veteran, brings the Stanley Cup experience, which obviously the Jets don't have, but it feels right. Like, it feels like to me, like Luke Schenn's been on the Jets for 3 or 4 years, and it's just exactly kind of what they needed at this point in the season, gearing up for the cup run.
Yeah, I'd like to get all your opinions on this. When his name was being thrown around before he came, I thought, okay, there's somebody who would fit, right? I mean, it's because he's not. I don't want to say this the wrong way. He's not a dynamic guy. So you don't worry about him upsetting the apple cart. He doesn't need power play minutes. And he's one of the. And this is strange, but years ago, I remember he was really nice to me when he didn't have to be. He didn't know who I was. We were in Tampa. He just did something that was kind, and it stuck with me. And I had a chance to chat with him finally the other day, and he's a solid citizen that way. But I think there's value in the stability of a guy who's played. Well, what's he played? 1,000 and
over 1,000, yeah.
Yep. And he's 35, and his game has never changed. I mean, you go back. You think about it, like that kid played at 18 in Toronto, which, I talked to Luke Richardson once about that. He had to do the same thing. And if I ever get time with Luke, I'd love to know how that went and the pressure that was with it and that sort of thing. But he's who he's always been. And so he's sort of a steadying factor element on defense. And I think it's interesting, too, that with Pionk out, and I talked about experimentation and knowing that some players can play with others, they've had to switch the defense a little bit. So it's shown that he knows how to play the game, right? So it's and when he steamrolls people, I like when he does that at home because fans always appreciate that sort of thing. So he's
already knocked one guy out for the season, Dan. Yeah. Arthur Kaliev is out for the year. Obviously, you don't want to see that, but it just shows you how dangerous of a physical specimen he is.
Yeah, and I think maybe the value of a guy like that goes up when the playoffs come and things get a little nastier in front of the net. So look, prices were high during the trade period, and you have to pay what the market says you have to pay. But I think they had to do it, and it's that's right, Kaliev. He hadn't played for like 3 weeks. He gets back in, and then now he's out for good. So, but that's Luke is huge. Like I didn't realize until I got up close to him. I'd forgotten how big he is. I mean, that's a man right there. He's a big dude.
And Dan, just to kind of springboard off of that one, but just we're talking about what he brings on the ice, but just the intangibles off the ice. And you talk about it a little bit, but how significant do you think that's going to be? I mean, this is a team that nibbled around the edges at the trade deadline. Actually, I thought that was probably the right thing for them to do. I like the moves that they made. They didn't really upset the apple cart. And don't think that it was just me who agreed. Chris Pronger agreed with me as well. He felt that was the same case. So when Chris Pronger is agreeing as that
name dropping Hall of Fame defenseman.
Not a big deal, but
Dave's personal relationship with Chris Pronger coming up later tonight on the Illegal Logging Show.
I'm just saying that Chris Pronger said that he agreed with my position that the Jets nibbling around the edges was probably a good thing. Getting guys like Schenn. From your perspective, what do you think that could do for like a guy like that in the short term and the long term? Because we know he signed for another season for a guy like Dylan Samberg, but also he's the only guy on this team that's actually won a Stanley Cup. And so his kind of been there, done that. I should say multiple Stanley Cups. What do you think that's going to do for a team that does really, again, these guys, they've had success throughout the regular season, but they haven't been winners in the playoffs?
I always wonder that. You'll see players be acquired and they'll say, well, he won a cup in whatever time. And I don't know, I can't remember the role that Luke played, but I think it was a time where his career kind of dipped a little bit. And I don't remember the amount of games he played during those runs for Tampa. But people I've talked with who've actually played and have coached assure me that it is important. And when you think about it, things get pretty tense, right? Obviously in the playoffs, there's a difference between a Sunday night in Seattle and late April here in round one. So I think somebody like that can really help being a sort of a stabilizing element in the room. I don't know if he's a very talkative guy, but I really think that just his presence and just the fact that, you mentioned a Sandberg or whoever, a younger guy can go to him or vice versa if they need some advice or whatever it is. The more I think about it, the more I appreciate the fact that these guys have won and they've seen everything, right? At 35 years old, there's nothing that he hasn't come across. So I think it's going to help. And I should say too, this is nice. I think Mike McIntyre tweeted it. He went home yesterday. So when I talked with him in Edmonton, I said, how are you? And he said, good. I said, how's a busy time? And he kind of said, yeah. So, he's got 3 kids, I think it's 3 in Nashville, and he hadn't seen them in a while. And I know I'm getting off track. We kind of forget that sometimes, right? These are human beings. And so I thought it's great that he's able to go yesterday. And I believe he's coming back today to get ready for the game tomorrow. So maybe there'll be a little more spring in his step tomorrow. But overall, I think guys like that can really help.
Yeah, small things like that certainly go a long way in, you think you said the personal side of this business that we forget about so quickly. Yeah. Dan Robertson, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning, presented by Play Now. The Jets and the Sabres tomorrow, Dan. I guess Connor Hellebuyck, has had got 2 more wins. He's now got more wins than, it seems like half the league, personally. Are you expecting that it's going to be Hellebuyck tomorrow again, or do you think that's sort of earmarks for a Comrie afternoon?
I would think Comrie. It makes sense the way the week is lined up. So then how many days does he get off? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So I think that would be good. And Eric's played well, right? I mean, and I don't know if it's fair to look at the opposition and think, okay, the Sabres are a weaker team. Maybe that's the time they'll put Comrie in. I think they feel good with him in there anytime. But I'll be interested to see how that goes down the stretch too, right? It's so what's his? I'm sure the Jets aren't worried about the fact. I think his record is 44 wins. He has 40. That's not the end goal here, but no, I think it would make sense that Comrie gets in. And just I know about as much about goaltending as I do about possums, but just to watch Comrie as of late, he's made some tremendous saves with leg saves. So where he has to push off from side to side, and I mean you have to be able to have that strength as a goaltender anyway. But I really appreciate that aspect of his game lately. You can look at the last few starts and there have been some tremendous stops from Eric, and there's a guy to root for, right? I mean, you can see how he's infectious and everybody likes him, but regardless of that, he's been excellent. I think we wondered, he's been very good. We wondered after Laurent Brossoit last year, it would be tough to follow that up, that backup role to be as good as Laurent was. And I think, Comrie's come pretty close so far.
It's funny about the Sabres, everyone knows where they are in the standings, at the bottom and the struggles it's been. 5-on-5, they can score. They have the 6th most goals 5-on-5 in the NHL. And that's sort of been something that they've been very adept at over the last number of years.
Now do the defense, Drew.
Well, that's the problem, of course, is the defense. I mean, there's no question about it, but it is sort of funny that that's a team that can still put the puck in the net at 5-on-5. You would expect better results, except for the fact that they have no defensive structure or identity whatsoever.
Well, there's a stat I'll use tomorrow. I didn't know that. I didn't dig in yet, but they play this afternoon against the Wild, so I'll be interested to watch that. I feel for their fan base, man. Like those, you go there and it's, you can almost feel it. It's just the life's been sucked out of them for so long. And Dan Dunleavy, who's a terrific play-by-play guy, I always get a chance to chat with him, and it's tough. And you see, this isn't news. You see these guys who were Sabres and go elsewhere and almost
look at Dylan Cousins already.
Oh, yeah. So that was even that, with all due respect to Josh Norris, that was an odd trade because he's had so much injury trouble, just that alone. So I hope they can get back in the playoffs at some point. But it's my gosh, what a drought it's been in Buffalo.
Dan, just sticking in the Eastern Conference, obviously getting away from the Jets. If you're okay with it,
sure.
I would love to get your opinion on the team you used to cover, because the Montreal Canadiens, boy oh boy, are they on a run here in a playoff spot. A couple of points up on the New York Islanders. Obviously, there's some other teams in there, the Rangers, the Blue Jackets. I don't know if the Detroit Red Wings were still sane or in there, but it's a logjam in that Eastern Conference playoff race. But kind of obviously your focus is here on the Jets and Winnipeg. But how much have you kind of been following the Habs and their run? Because I think you'd agree, like, nobody really saw this coming. Most people thought they'd be better, but I mean, it would just be incredible if they were able to make the playoffs this year.
It would, and I follow them closely because I have a lot of friends who still work at TSN 690. So I listen a lot just because they're my buddies, and so I guess by osmosis, I kind of follow the Canadians and called a couple of their games this year when the Jets didn't have any after Christmas, and they needed me to go and do that. So there's a lot of excitement there right now. Like, it's, you know, that market is crazy, and I didn't expect it. But one thing that happened apparently is Nick Suzuki went to Jeff Gordon and said, don't trade, you know, David Savard or Yoel Armia or Christian Dvorak. Let's just see what we can do. And he kind of made a plea to him. And so they're right in the middle of it. And they got a point. And it's funny, I was listening to the guys the other day. They said, did we win that point against the Islanders or did we lose it? They lost in overtime. But it's good for hockey, I think, when they're relevant. But it's, you know what? There's a lot of teams logjam there, as you say. I don't know how many of them are top quality. The NHL is getting what it wants, I think, with parity. But when you look on that side, it's pretty cool, right? It could go anywhere. And boy, the Rangers have been disappointing, as I think about it that you said them. But no, some of those guys are quietly coming around. Slavkovsky had a terrible start to the season, but he's been effective. They have a really good line with Suzuki and Caulfield, and some guys are making contributions now, and I feel good for Brendan Gallagher. Scored a couple of big goals. He just lost his mom, Della, yes. And which I'm glad they were able to keep that quiet in that market. He's, you know, there's nobody who works harder than him, and there's been a lot of criticism of him because he's slowed down the last little while, but he's gotten better, and I think for his happiness, or just to give him something, I'd like to see them make the playoffs. But then again, my buddy Dave Poulin helping run the Senators, right? Will they get in? It's going to be so much fun to watch, I think.
Well, Dan, how ready are you for those playoffs? I mean, we talk about the weariness of the long regular season. Are you already turning the page and ready to go out from Game 71 upcoming to Game 83?
Well, I wish. We don't have playoff coverage, so yeah, that's all Sportsnet's territory. So
yeah, of course.
Yeah, but what I'm going to do is, I've never been to a Jets playoff game. Well, I shouldn't say that. I've called them in the bubble in Montreal, which wasn't the same thing. You can think about that. It's just like it never happened. But no, yeah. I can't wait. So so our last game is, I believe, a Sunday against the Oilers, and then there's a 14th. Yeah. So I'm thinking the next Saturday or Sunday they'll start. So I'll get my taste of a whiteout. I've already put in my request to buy a ticket, and if I don't, there's going to be a scalper who's going to get rich off me because I don't want to miss it. I can't wait. I really can't wait.
The earliest it'll be is the Sunday, because I know that they have events booked at the arena on the Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So the earliest the Jets playoff home game will be is the Sunday. I guess that would be the April the 20th.
I was told that they might have to move that BTO concert on Saturday. So
okay.
You never
didn't know that was an option.
You got to take care of business, right?
More importantly, Dan, you're always welcome to come sit beside a legal curve in the press box. If you don't mind all the possum talk, you're always welcome to sit with us in the press box.
I might go today and watch. Is it Abbotsford in town, Dave?
Yeah, Abbotsford and Manitoba, 6 o'clock.
It's been too long since I've seen those guys play, so I might get my act together and get over there.
There you go. Right. Very reasonable thing to do on a Saturday. We'll let you go on this last one, Dan. I mean, we've been having this discussion, this back and forth. You mentioned, how, the flip side of the coin, if, as opposed to all the success the Jets are having, is being like a team like the Buffalo Sabres. How much, stock, how much pride do you think that the organization would put in, or would would accept if they ended up winning the President's Trophy? Do you think it matters to the players? Do you think it matters to the organization? We know that the Stanley Cup is what matters the most, but do you put stock in winning the President's Trophy?
That's a great question. Obviously, statistically, you do, or just the fact that you have home ice as far as you go.
Mm-hmm.
But in and of itself, I don't know. I'm going to start to ask the guys that. Maybe you can too, Dave. We'll figure it out. We'll get a poll. And obviously, they're going to say, well, yeah, if they do it, we feel great, but our goal is to win the Stanley Cup. But you can't discount it where they are. I mean, we talk about the length of the season and just the way the games are stacked up because of the four nations and the consistency. It's incredible. And I've said this to Kevin on broadcast and off the air. I think when you're in the middle of something that's pretty special, sometimes you don't appreciate it. So like lots of times, and for good reason, I'll hear, well, back in 2017-18, and people will talk glowingly about the Jets season that year, as they should, but maybe we're in the middle of something like that right now. So, there's a smell the roses kind of thing that I hope the guys are doing. And I hope they appreciate that the stuff that we pick at is nitpicking, because there's not a lot of negatives, really. It's funny. The other night in the pregame show, I interviewed Scott Arniel, and he laughed when I asked him, because I talked about the switch up of the third and fourth lines, and I think he kind of chuckled as if to say, okay, I don't need to have this question asked anymore. But it's almost, we're looking for something to not pick at, but I guess the end result being that I would guess they would feel pretty darn good about where they are. But yeah, on the other hand, I don't think that outwardly they're going to say, yeah, we're the President's Trophy champions, but I hope they appreciate it if they actually get there. So we'll see. Maybe big game coming on against the Capitals to maybe help determine.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to throw in, Dan. I mean, like you were joking about kind of doing a poll, or maybe you weren't joking. Maybe there will be a poll coming out on TSN3. But at the end of the day, whether the player says yes, we put a lot of stock into winning the President's Trophy, or no, at the end of the day, there's another piece of hardware that they want, right? So the way I kind of look at it is like, yes, it's great to get home ice advantage throughout the playoffs, but these guys all have their eyes on that Lord Stanley's Cup. So it's kind of like a, there's no right or wrong answer, right?
Yeah, and I guess the ultimate thing is for them to ramp up and to be, when game one of the playoffs comes around, to be healthy and to be kind of get everything going, the penalty kill, everything, which is easier said than done. So, but it's, and I asked this too, if I asked Craig and Kevin on air the other night, are these the dog days? Like, is it tough to get up for games when it's game 71 and they're not life and death they're going to make the playoffs. We know that, right? So it's just such a long year, and there's so many different stages of it, but it's exciting, man. I can't wait. I think we have like 7 broadcasts left out of the however many games they have left. So 12. Yeah. I'm not great at math, that and possum knowledge. So yeah, it's going to be fun.
It will be. Dan Robertson will be on the call tomorrow afternoon, the Jets and the Sabres. You can tune in on TSN3 to hear what Dan and Kevin have to say about the Jets and possums and anything else that these two comedians bring to the table. Dan, thank you. Appreciate your time this morning. Always great to catch up with you.
Yeah, always great to watch and listen to you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan. There he goes, Dan Robertson, joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Always great to catch up with Dan. Hour number 2 up next here on the program. Marty Biron at the bottom of the hour. We'll talk to Marty about the Sabres. That's the team he covers, as well as look around the entire NHL, and of course, plenty of Jets talk as well with our good friend Marty. So stay with us for that. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show is presented by Play Now, and it rolls on this Saturday morning.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Center. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, Make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime. Visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Center. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
Saturday morning. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. Always great to catch up with our good friend Dan Robertson. The show presented by our friends at Play Now. Learn to bet with Play Now, the official betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets. Sign up and get up to $250 in bonus bets. Conditions apply. 18+. Enjoy responsibly. Tomorrow afternoon, the Jets and the Buffalo Sabres. Means post-game show. The game ends at about 4:40, so post-game show right around there. 2 o'clock puck drop. We'll be back with the Illegal Curve post-game show. This is sort of the appetizer, the calm before the storm. Mm-hmm. The headline game of the week, of course, is the Jets and the Washington Capitals. I noticed already completely sold out for Tuesday night. Unless you go on the resale market, there are no tickets available, which is great to see everybody showing up, which for a great clash between the first and the second place teams in the NHL. The Washington Capitals, they have 100 points. The Winnipeg Jets, they have 100 points. The Caps with a game in hand on the Winnipeg Jets.
So Drew, what are the odds that Alex Ovechkin scores 7 goals before Tuesday's game?
Yeah. So he would need to score. I think they play today. The Capitals
they do.
do, if I'm not mistaken.
They do.
Who do they play today? I don't think he's going to get it there, as
he's on 888s right now.
Yeah.
888.
888, yeah, exactly right. Yeah. The Capitals play tonight, or I saw it somewhere here. I just don't know where it went. Florida, yes, there it is. 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Courtesy of Frosty, not courtesy of me.
Okay, the Panthers are at the Capitals this
afternoon. I was Googling, but again, my sausage fingers, sometimes they get in each other's way. And yeah.
It's because you're actually holding sausage while you're trying to Google. It's a real problem there sometimes. You might want to put those down.
That's my morning sausage, Drew.
Of course, on the road trip. But tomorrow against the Sabres, the Sabres will be on the second half of a back-to-back. They play this afternoon in Minnesota, then they'll travel here. So it's not like they'll get here late or anything, but it's the second half of a back-to-back. The Jets need to, I think, what I'm going to keep an eye on in particular is just try and get that defensive structure back. The defensive structure, which maybe got a little loose, particularly in Vancouver, maybe a little loose at times against the Edmonton Oilers. You need to keep that structure. As we talked about with Dan just a couple minutes ago, the Sabres are a team that can score.
Yep.
So we know that they can score. They have the offensive power to score, particularly at 5-on-5. It's that they do so while playing a track meet style of game, shades of the Winnipeg Jets of old, to be perfectly honest, in how they have very little structure. So a team like the Jets that needs to rely on its structure, or that has emphasized its structure for so much of the last few years, needs to maintain that structure. And I think that's going to be a key to success tomorrow afternoon against the Buffalo Sabres.
Absolutely. We've talked about it on the post-game shows. There's been way too many uncharacteristic, unforced errors from the Jets that have led directly to goals, right, Dave? And I think even though Buffalo has, some big offensive weapons like Tage Thompson and JJ Peterka and obviously Rasmus Dahlin from the back end, Alex Tuch is a guy that's having a very underrated season. We were talking about him prior to the deadline. I was hoping maybe the Jets could pry Tuch out of Buffalo. Obviously, Buffalo guys didn't decide to go full sell mode, by the way. And that's one of the things I want to ask Marty Biron about because, obviously Buffalo, it's not like they had any playoff hopes. They were way out of it. So I'm actually like a little bit surprised. Obviously, this isn't a trade deadline show, guys, but I was a little bit surprised that they didn't move more assets. Like, remember Jason Zucker? Dave was another guy whose name was out there.
They re-signed him instead.
Yeah. So I was a little bit surprised by that. Like, you're re-signing a guy who's kind of a middling player. I mean, you have to, granted, you do have to have, solid veteran players to surround some of your younger players like Jack Quinn, right? But it's definitely a very flawed team. They haven't had good goaltending this year. That's been an issue, going forward a while now. Like Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, Devin Levi has been the kind of heir apparent there. But he hasn't really
been there for a while now.
Yeah, and I believe Devin Levi is injured right now, if I'm not mistaken. He hasn't played, just checking, he hasn't played since end of January. So I believe Devin Levi is injured, but the reality is this just isn't a very good defensive team, guys. It's not very deep. Mm-hmm. Josh Norris, I find that trade kind of like a lateral trade, Dave. Like, yeah. I don't really see, like, Dylan Cousins, like, what's his ceiling is kind of like a 2C. He's obviously playing well in Ottawa, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't really know. I don't think that makes your team worse or better. So I look at the Buffalo Sabres, and I mean, this is definitely a team you can take advantage of offensively. But going back to what Drew said before, you got to clean up your game. You got to start avoiding some of those turnovers in your own zone, in the neutral zone. And you want to get back to more of a complete game, because I think you guys would agree. Edmonton, it was kind of a good period here, good period, bad period there. It wasn't a complete game. And also the guys, I think this is a game, especially going into that big tilt against Washington, Dave, it'd be nice if you could pop in at least one power play goal against the Sabres.
Yeah, I mean, like we've talked about, I mean, this is an opportunity for you to get your game a little bit back on track and a little more consistent and remove, as you just said, Ezzy, some of those uncharacteristic errors. I mean, the Hayden Fleury pass, which led to the first Oilers goal, the Luke Shen pass, which led to the third Oilers goals. Those are uncharacteristic mistakes. Generally speaking, Hayden Fleury's error wouldn't come back to haunt the Jets, but Jeff Skinner beats Connor Hellebuck with a shot that is unexpected, from him to be able to get beat by that, that clean from that far away. So I just think that there's an opportunity for the Jets to kind of, as he says, to refine their game, beat up on the Sabres if you can. The Sabres haven't been a good road team. I think they're 10-20-3 away from Buffalo. They've actually got a winning record at home.
I was going to say, Dave, they haven't been a good home team either.
Well, but they're at least 17-14-3 at home, but they're 10-20-3 on the road. They're 3-6-1 in their last 10 games. Their goal differential actually isn't abysmal. Like, I mean, given some of the teams we've seen that are the bottom feeders, like, for example, in the West, San Jose's goal differential -79, Chicago's -61, even Nashville's -49. So the -26 of the Sabres looks rather elite coming from a bottom team when you look at the three in the West. And there are teams in the East that have a lot worse goal differentials than the Sabres. But again, this is a team that has scored more than some of the other bottom feeders, and they haven't given up quite as many goals as the others. And look, I can't imagine. I mean, I feel like every year we talk to Marty and we get him on the show, and we're like, they've got all these prospects in Rochester, and there's all this excitement. And okay, this is going to be finally the year that this Buffalo team takes and look, this isn't Sabres lunch, but I just think that it's got to be just an awful feeling for fans in Buffalo to every year after year being like, okay, finally, Jets fans are are triggered at the playoffs, and they expect the playoffs, and they, right now they're expecting, early exits from the playoffs, but they're, at least the minimum expectation is playoffs. And then, of course, now this year and last year, they're higher expectations. But in Buffalo, it's unfortunate. And again, like I said, I don't think you take them lightly, because on any given night, we've seen it, right? And we tend to focus, and Jets fans tend to focus on this market, but like, bad teams beat good teams all the time, right? Vegas is losing to bad teams. Like, it's not as if just
this is the point in the show, Dave. I'll remind everybody that the Jets have lost 2 games to the Anaheim Ducks, and I do think the Anaheim Ducks are an up and coming team. But I'm just saying, like, the Jets have lost some games that they should have won this year.
You can always lose. You can never take your opponent for granted, and once you do that, that's where it's going to bite you. Right. I'm just talking about from the Jet. Again, you had this 3-game road trip that was successful in terms of the standings. 2 wins, 1 loss. That's successful. No problem about that. I just think you want to use this as an opportunity to not fall into bad habits. That's where I think your concern might be a little bit over the course of the rest of the season, is that, and I don't expect this to be a problem for this Jets team, I'll be honest. They've been so diligent and so determined and so disciplined all season long that I'd be surprised to see them lose all of that over the course of the next 12 games. But you just want to make sure that those bad habits are one-offs. They don't become, more consistent. So again, against a team like Buffalo, it's not an easy game to play. They're a lower team in the standings, but when you play these teams with no structure and have zero dams to give because they're so bad, they can go out there and play freewheeling hockey. Exactly. From the Jets' perspective, you have to maintain, no, this is what we need to do. And once we do this, they should wilt, because they're not going to be able to, they're not going to have any interest in playing our game. We just make sure we can't start playing their game. That's where they could maybe find some success, Dave.
I'll just finish my thought, and to be honest with you, as a continuation of what you're asking, Drew, and I just think it's that idea of returning to what has made the Jets successful. That's what they need to do, and it's not, regardless of opponent, regardless of whether they're playing a Buffalo Sabres team on Sunday or a Washington Capitals team on Tuesday. One of the hallmarks of this Jets team has been to not change their game, to play a consistent style, a consistent brand, one that you could say, okay, that's what we have come to expect from the Winnipeg Jets. And so like
the game against Dallas, like, it's almost like when there's more of a boring style of play, that's when the Jets are at their best, right, Dave? Like, I think you'd agree in that Dallas game.
Smothering is how the Jets play.
Exactly. Like, we've talked about it, like the killer bees type of hockey, where you get an early lead, right? And sorry to cut you off here, Dave. I'm not trying to steal your thunder.
No, it's all good.
That's the type of hockey, like, move the puck quickly out of your zone, get on the forecheck, like, have those waves of offense.
Score first,
get a power play, score on the power play. Like, the Jets, when the Jets play like that, they're really unstoppable. When they play a little more of a carefree type of hockey, like, I think this game, Drew, and sorry, we want to go back to you, Dave, but I think this game is going to look a lot more like the Seattle game, because the Seattle Kraken are out of a playoff spot and have no chance of making the playoffs. I think it's going to be that type of game. Like, against Seattle, you had guys like Marty Biron and Shane Wright and, Jared McCann, Capo Caco. Like, these guys, they're playing for next year, right? They're playing that spoiler role. They want to beat the Jets to show them, okay, yeah, we know we're not a playoff team, but we're going to come in here and we're going to take a couple points. But getting back to you, Dave, I do think the Jets are at a huge advantage here with the days off between their games, and also the Sabres coming in on the second game of a back-to-back, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why you have to you're right, you have to take it to them early, and you have to gain control of that hockey game, and then impose your will, and then play your game consistently. And you're not going to play it for a 60-minute game, because nobody does in the NHL. But, and Dan Robertson made this point, and I agree with him, the NHL's quest for parity has allowed, there's no teams that are flawless. There just aren't. And so folks can be like maligning the Jets and say, well, they X, Y, and Z, but guys, go around the league. You tell me one team that is flawless. There isn't one team in the NHL that is flawless. There's some very good hockey teams, but every single team, we just happen to be in this market. So everybody's hyper-focused on the Winnipeg Jets. But I can tell you, if you do this same conversation with, forget about the 16 teams not in the playoffs, but the 16 teams that are currently in the playoffs, they're having, or even the top 5 teams in both conferences, markets are having similar conversations about individual players, percentages of, the face-offs or power plays, penalty kills. So my point is that every team is having that sort of dialogue. And it comes back to, when Connor Hellebuyck has a chance. And again, I'm going to go back to Connor Hellebuyck because, like I said, you're still seeing quality starts from him. When you look at the numbers, he still had a quality start against the Oilers. Again, that doesn't change the fact that he gave up a bad goal, which put him at a negative. But he got back into that spot because, the Jets gave up some quality, and we talked about it. There were a lot of rush chances in that game.
Yeah.
Which you would expect with Connor McDavid playing 2 periods. But at the end of the day, the Jets will see what Connor Hellebuyck does. I mean, he's going to step up. I mean, we know the Capitals aren't happy with the way the Jets beat them in Washington. And I know I'm trying not to look past the Sabres, but I'm just saying,
you're right, though, because that is the game of the week. I mean, you're allowed to look, we don't need to delve deep for 30 minutes into Buffalo and the Jets specifically. I mean, the game against
Thank
Washington,
God, please, because I mean, how much can we talk about JJ Peterka, right?
You can.
And also Pierre-Luc Dubois' return to Winnipeg. I mean, I know he's been back since with the Kings, but I'm just saying now he's with a new team. I'm sure fans will be giving it to him a little bit there.
Looking forward to that video tribute, Dave.
Yeah, the second video tribute. Yeah. But to your point, though, Dave, it's 1 versus 2.
Yeah.
It's the 2 top teams in the league. That is the main event. It should be the game that has got the focus. There's a reason. I mean,
to use a March Madness comparison, this is like Kentucky versus Duke, right, Dave? Right, Drew?
I think
and I suspect that the NHL will not have it on the website at all.
There's no question the NHL will miss the opportunity, but the NHL misses every opportunity to miss an opportunity.
They might not.
Or the NHL has never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity.
This time because of Ovechkin, even though as he says he's not going to break the record in Winnipeg, which is not unfortunate, but
I mean, he could always score 6 goals against the Jets, Dave. You never.
Well, he'd have to score. Yeah, I mean, maybe he scores a couple against the Panthers, but I mean, as everyone in this chat knows, we've witnessed many records set here in Winnipeg against the Jets. Of course, the Steven Stamkos one comes to mind when he got his 60th. Was that in the first year or the second year of the Jets?
I think that was the second year, if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
but I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, doesn't matter. But anyways, point is that look, I mean, that's
second year was the second year, the lockout year.
No, the second year was the lockout year. It was the first year.
Yeah, so it must have been the first year.
It was the first year.
Okay.
But
Imagine Dragons were tearing up the charts.
My son loves Imagine Dragons for the record.
Great band.
I have to play Imagine Dragons nonstop in the car. Sam
has good taste.
Yeah, the other day he asked me to play Drop It Like It's Hot by Snoop the other day. I'm like, I'm not sure that's appropriate for you, Sam, but sure, buddy. Again, we digress on that front. But you're right, the Jets and the Capitals that's the marquee game. These two teams, the game that they played against in Washington was a hell of a hockey game. It was back and forth. It was the Jets out to an early lead, Washington coming back. I think the Jets ended up winning in overtime, if I recall correctly.
That was a Josh Morrissey goal.
Right. I mean,
tap.
That's right. That was a hell of a hockey game. I mean, you want to see something similar on Tuesday night because it's the proverbial, could be the Stanley Cup final. I don't believe it will be. Something about Washington has the best shooting percentage of any team in the NHL, I think, in the last, it's almost like decades. So their shooting percentage is so high that you expect at some point in time it's going to come down to earth. But at the same time, don't take anything away from them the way they've been able to perform all season long. So people in Winnipeg will get an opportunity to see that, and the Jets will see it, and they know that's at stake. They know that this is none of these games are measuring stick games anymore because you've been measured and you've passed with flying colors. It just should be a damn good hockey game between two damn good hockey teams.
As just quickly, I was just going to interject. It's why when they were trying to say there was a narrative that the Oilers were mad that the Jets spanked them on opening night, I'm like, I don't think these teams can remember what happened 2 games before. You're telling me they remember something that happened 69 games ago?
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case. I think these teams have moved well past that. And even the Washington game where the Jets, won in overtime, I'm not so sure folks are still fixated on that one, Ezzy.
No, absolutely not. And I feel like, we're talking a lot about how the Jets need to get back to more of a mistake-free defensive structure and everything like that. But I'm just looking ahead to that game Tuesday, and I'm like, don't expect a 2-1 game between these two teams, right? Because we always talk about this, right? Every time the Jets and Oilers play, it seems like it's a 4-3, 5-3 type of game, right? And maybe more so with the Oilers because they've been a bit of a mess defensively. But look, it's the marquee matchup of the week. There's no doubt about it, guys, right? Like there's no secrets anymore, right? Like it's Washington and Winnipeg for the President's Trophy. There's nobody else that's really in it right now. Like, I mean, you've got the Florida Panthers 13 points behind the Washington Capitals. Like,
the next closest team is the Dallas Stars, and they're 10 points back. I mean,
exactly, right? So, like, when have we seen this, guys, where, you know, you've got one team in the West versus one team in the East for the President's Trophy, and there's nobody really in the rearview mirror, right? It's pretty incredible.
Washington clinched their playoff spot. I think it was 2 nights ago that they were the first team to clinch.
And people were asking, you know, Dave, we should mention, people in the chat were asking. I haven't, you know, looked at any numbers or seen any numbers. I'm not sure if you guys have. But I'm assuming that the Jets are very close. I don't know if they can clinch with the win on Sunday.
Dave has the number. Dave has it for us.
Here's what it is. But as I will mention while I'm pulling this up, the craziest thing about Washington is they were the last team to clinch last year, and they're the first team to clinch this year. And they clinched last year with just an abysmal goal differential. I think it was like minus 40.
And that's the story. Sorry, Dave. I was just going to say that's really the story of this year in the NHL, right? You've got last year's President's Trophy winning team currently in 9th place. Like the last year's President's Trophy winner, the Rangers, might not make the playoffs this year. And like you said, the team that barely made it into the playoffs is now the top team in the entire league, right? Like, it's unbelievable. It shows you the parity.
So here's the clinching scenarios for the Jets, even though they do not play. If the Blues lose to the Blackhawks in any fashion, and
they should disband the organization if the Blues lose to the Blackhawks in any fashion.
And so it's not just that coming to fruition, and the Canucks lose to the Rangers in regulation. So for the Jets to clinch, those two things need to happen, and then the Jets.
No, sorry, Dave. There's actually a third thing that you forgot to mention. Drew can't shave his mustache. Drew has to keep his mustache. Then the Jets clinch a playoff spot.
There you go. So, I mean,
as long as they don't shave, the Jets will clinch a playoff spot, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know, I think Laura's willing to sacrifice the mustache for the Jets playoff spot.
I don't think you should shave that mustache anytime soon, Drew. I mean, like, it's
created a lot of conversation, Ezzy, that's for sure. Everybody's calling him Pablo Mendel. So
it's illustrious.
I did honeymoon in Colombia back in the day. When after Laura and I got married, that is where we went for our honeymoon. Is Colombia. So
he represented the Curve Cartel in Colombia.
That's right, the Curve Cartel. It was just about sandwiches, though, not drugs. We had no influence in the cocaine trade, just sandwiches. You know, but going back to the on ice Jets and everything else, and you know, we talked about with Dan and Nino Niederreiter is a guy who I do think you can sort of see signs of him coming through the other side of these struggles. And again, these aren't unusual for him. These have been things that have been in his career. There have been plenty of times where he has gone dry offensively. But that assist to Morrissey, I mean, he came very close to scoring in Vancouver. I see the light at the end of the tunnel for him. And frankly, I think that come playoff time, those games will be better suited for his type of role. We know that he's not a flashy goal scorer. He's not going to score off the rush Ehlers-esque very often. That's not his game. So when the ice becomes harder to get through, when there's more bodies to have to navigate, when there's more, you know, trees to have to maneuver past, I think that's where you're going to see him succeed more. And I think I do see signs of that improving for Nino Niederreiter. And kudos to Mike for asking him about it on this road trip. That article, of course, available on illegalcurve.com and the winnipegfreepress.com.
Yeah, well, boys, we thought there might be a change on that third line, right? We thought we might see Lowry, Tanev, Iafallo stay together, right? And what we saw was Scott Arniel defaults to Appleton and Nino Niederreiter and Lowry. And what ends up happening, Nino Niederreiter makes a beautiful pass. I mean, it's engraved in my mind, just right on Josh Morrissey's stick. Really, I feel like that goal needs to be almost discussed a little bit more. That was a beautiful goal. Like, I mean, Josh Morrissey.
Go for it. You have the platform to discuss it all you want.
I mean, it was just like there were some nice goals in that game. Obviously, Kyle Connor's OT winner wasn't bad. I actually watched the replay and I don't know if you guys were thinking this too. Like, I was watching the replay and I'm like, I don't know if we gave enough credit to Josh Morrissey for skating in front of kind of crossing in front of Calvin Pickard and making it taking his eyes away a little bit. But yeah, I mean, you see guys do that on the power play sometimes where guys will like jump across. Remember Philip Forsberg did that against the Jets when Nashville was in town years ago. But I'm just saying that the third line, I think you could see that line was not producing. Like, even Mason Appleton has struggled offensively, right, Dave? But Arniel sticks with that line, and Niederreiter gets a huge assist at the time. That was the tying goal, right? So yeah, I think Nino's going to be fine. And And again, like, I know it's a cliche, but like a guy like Niederreiter is the most effective when he's crashing the net, going to the net, causing havoc, getting in on the forecheck, right? And he has been doing that. So I think he'll be fine. And we've had a few people mention Nino's a guy that always steps up his game in the playoffs. He plays that playoff style of hockey. He can crash and bang with the best of them. He's a big man, right? So I think he'll be fine. And I wouldn't be surprised if he breaks his goalless drought against Buffalo, because they're certainly not a defensive powerhouse.
You mentioned Mason Appleton there, Ezzy, and it sort of comes to mind. You look at the bottom 6 of the Winnipeg Jets, and we'll probably give this more time maybe on next week's show, but just some, a little teaser. The bottom 6 for the Winnipeg Jets, so take Nikolai Ehlers out of the equation. The bottom 6 has got those 3 pending UFAs. Tanev now, Iafallo, Appleton.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned this, because I was going to send you guys a message and say, do you want to talk about that? But I think
you have to rank them in priority.
Yeah. It's a tough one.
What's 1, 2, 3 in terms of priority for you?
Well, yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Well, I mean, to me, it's Iafallo, who number 1 has expressed a desire to stay in the city, and
right.
and again, I don't think the cap's going up, so you have more latitude there, but you're not. I don't think you're signing him for $4 million, but I think,
and it's also most likely a short-term deal, right, Dave? You're talking about what, 2 years, 2 or 3, yeah.
2 or 3 at the most.
It's similar to the Niederreiter
or the Nemestikov, yeah. And I think he's the kind of player who fits in perfectly. I think he's the guy who can move up and down the lineup. He provides a lot on special teams. So Alex Iafallo to me is a no-brainer number 1.
Let me stop you for a second. Of the 3, how many do you think the Jets are really going to?
2 at the most. They're not re-signing at Mason Appleton. Mason Appleton is, as far as I'm concerned, good as gone, especially after the comments by his agent, Rich Winter, I think it was last week, where he lamented Vlad Nemestikov signing for what he did and said, it could have been a longer term. We should have waited because the cap's going up. But the reality is, you also have to look on the Moose and see what they have to replace him. And you've got guys like Nikita Chibrikov. You've got younger, cheaper options. So you let Mason Appleton get his big contract with someone else. And if you can get Brandon Tanev back, maybe you do it. But to me, Alex Iafallo is the only one you're talking about.
Hold that thought. We'll talk more about that now as we welcome to the program, looking dapper as can be,
looking
as
sharp,
he's getting
Marty.
ready to do a broadcast. Marty Biron joins us on the show this morning. The Sabres, of course, in action in Minnesota this afternoon. Marty, thanks for jumping on with us on a game day. Appreciate it.
Anytime. I dressed up for the occasion, right? That's part of the deal.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that, because the 3 of us certainly didn't. So you're looking sharper as compared to the 3 of us. Obviously, the Sabres will be in town tomorrow to face the Jets, and they're in Minnesota today against the Wild. Yeah. This Buffalo team, again, we'll touch on them. Are you seeing any signs of progress from them? I mean, it's been so long. And we were talking about it earlier with our buddy Dan Robertson, just the struggle it must be for the organization, for the fan base, for the players themselves. Is there a light at the end of this tunnel from your perspective, Marty?
Well, okay, so this is kind of interesting, because all week we've been talking about it. Like, my big thing right now is, what does it look like game 1 next year? But you still have to recap and look at what's happening this year. So Tage Thompson will likely get to 40 goals. Alex Tuch will get to 30 goals. You're getting a career year out of Jason Zucker, career year out of JJ Peterka, career year out of Ryan McLeod. You're probably going to get 3 defensemen that will have 40 or more points, and one of them may get to 70 points. And it's like, how can you have all these pieces and then it doesn't pan out to anything win-wise? And so I think the biggest thing for me are, one, defensively, they've given up way too many goals. And I'm going to include goaltending in there, right? Like, your goalies have to do the job. You cannot go on a stretch of 7 games, 8 games where you're giving up 4 or 5 on average per night. That's impossible. So that has to be better. And your special teams have to be better. I mean, penalty kill, yes, comes into play with the goaltending and with the goals given up, but your power play has to be able to kind of threaten a little bit, because right now other teams are like, we don't care if they have a scoring chance, we're going to hook, we're going to hold, we're going to cross check. They're not scoring on the power play. Power play is not good enough right now, so it makes a big difference. But it's very, very puzzling to think that you get a 40 goal scorer, 30 goal scorer, career year for 3 and all of that, and it's still last in the Eastern Conference.
Well, to Marty, it's funny, you talk about the offense, and it reminds me sort of the Jets before Rick Bowness came here, in that the offense is always there. There's always the performance and they can put the puck in the net, but there's no structure. There's no commitment to defense. And ever since Rick Bowness came here and then carried on by Scott Arniel, we've seen that commitment where it starts on the back end. Are you surprised that Lindy Ruff has not been able to, instill that commitment to defense for the Sabres? And if he can't, who can?
Well, I think it took a half a year for Lindy Ruff to evaluate what he has, right? Like it's you're a new coach, you're coming in, you're being told, oh, this guy's a good player, this guy's a good player, but then you put it all together and you're like, no, I'm not crazy about this player and I like this. So he had to evaluate, and I think there was some frustrating part of the evaluation process, and obviously they lost 13 games in a row. So now I feel like we're seeing the direction a little bit more clear. They traded Dylan Cousins. Well, okay, like to get something, you got to give up something. And they weren't really feeling like Cousins was going to be a part of the direction they wanted to go. So they get Josh Norris. I think there's going to be more moves in the summertime. Look, Kevin Adams worked with Lindy Ruff. Kevin was one of his assistant coaches when Lindy Ruff was in Buffalo. So Kevin brings Lindy back. I know they're talking every day about the players and the personnel and the direction. And I know Kevin's listening to Lindy. So if Lindy's like, hey, I don't know about this guy. I don't know about this guy. This guy, I can make him a good player. I can work on this. I think we're going to see changes. But I really feel like, just like Rick Bowness, Lindy Ruff's a good coach, but Lindy Ruff always has been a really good coach when he had goaltending. Hasek, Miller, his year in New Jersey had a really good year out of Vitek Vanacek. That made a difference. In Dallas, when Kari Lettman was good, he was a good coach. When they didn't get goaltending, it wasn't as great. So it starts with the crease for me, for Lindy to be successful.
Marty, just sticking with goaltending, I know we seem to always do that, but I mean, of course, you were a longtime NHL goaltender, so it makes sense, right? But just quickly, I know, and I know we're not going to go the full 30 minutes like we usually do because you've got the game. But Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, is he still the short-term kind of answer, or is he still what's the future there? Because obviously, defensively as a team, like you said earlier, there have been struggles, so we're not going to put this all on UPL, but what's the future there, especially with Devin Levi, who I believe is injured, if I'm not mistaken, right now. He hasn't played in a while, right?
He's in Rochester. And he's having a really good year in Rochester. He's a top 5 goalie in Rochester in the AHL. But again, I look at, for example, Connor Hellebuck. When he got to Winnipeg, it wasn't like, okay, you're a number one guy. No, let's take the time with Connor Hellebuck. You look at UC Saros. Let's take the time with UC Saros. All the goalies that have had success or actually sustainability at the NHL level, they've taken their time. So I look at Devin Levi. I don't know if the AHL next year is where he should be, because he's doing exactly what he should be doing. He's dominating at the AHL level. The numbers are great. I think he's ready for the NHL next year, but it's not as a 1A, 1B. It should be, look, you're going to play 25, 30 games, but you're going to be here all season long, practicing, learning the league, learning the systems. That's what it needs to be. Not, hey, let's get you here. You're playing game one. You're going to, no, that doesn't work. But with Luukkonen, the biggest thing for me is he's a big goaltender, but plays very small. And that drives me nuts. There's small goaltenders that play big, and there's big goalies that play small. Playing small does not work. The shooters are way too good. And it's not like people are going to say, okay, how do you play big? Hand positioning, shoulders back. Are you really wide with your feet? A little bit more compact. Connor Hellebuck's the perfect example. Look at how big Connor Hellebuck looks. But if you put Hellebuck next to Luukkonen is a monster without his gear next to Hellebuck. So there's a big difference there. I think that's the number one thing. Does he have the abilities? Yes, Luukkonen does. but too many times he looks too small, and there needs to be a tweak there.
Marty, you mentioned Connor Hellebuck, which is a good lead into my question, because there's a lot of talk. Goalies can win the Vezina, but they can't win the Hart. We don't see it very often. Are you seeing a good enough goaltending performance from Connor Hellebuck? We expect the Vezina, but what about from a Hart perspective?
I said it maybe 2-3 months ago. If Connor Hellebuck has a chance to winning the Hart, he needs to get to 49 or even 50 wins in the season. That will swayed some of the votes, right? Saying, hey, he's done something so amazing that nobody's ever done this. Like Marty Brodeur, Braden Holtby got to 48 wins. Nobody's gotten to 49 or 50. I'm starting to think that may not be possible. Look, the Jets have 12 games left. How many games do you want to play Connor Hellebuck in the last 12? If you think he's playing 9 or 10, he has to win every one of his games to get to 49 or 50.
And there's no reason for him to play that many.
Right here. I don't know that I want him to play 9 or 10. Right. I probably think 8 is the number. So, just because I don't think he'll get there. But who knows? Maybe he does. Maybe he gets on a streak and, you carry that into the playoffs. For me, now Draisaitl is banged up and hurt in Edmonton. I think the Oilers would maybe not even be in the playoff spot if it wasn't for what Draisaitl has done. Look, McDavid's good, like season's good, like he's the best player in the world, but it's been Draisaitl. I know people are saying Nathan McKinnon has been unbelievable. Yeah, give him the Hart Ross. Like he's gonna win the scoring championship and great. But I really feel Draisaitl is my number 1 pick. McKinnon would be 2, and Hellebuck would be 3 right now.
Marty Biron, our guest Saturday morning, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Marty getting set to join the Sabres broadcast as they play the Wild before they come to Winnipeg tomorrow to face the Jets. Marty, we spent a lot of time here in Winnipeg sort of lamenting. A lot of people were lamenting the trade deadline acquisitions because they weren't the big flashy ones like you saw in Dallas or like you saw in Colorado. From a dressing room perspective, what does it do to the room when the additions are more on the edge or periphery players as opposed to big splashy ones? Is that a big vote of confidence, or does the room just sort of go about their thing day to day without really putting much stock into that?
It depends how you spin it. And if you're the coach or the GM, you have to spin it the right way. You have to say, we love the room. We think you guys are the group we want to go with. We added a couple of pieces, but we trust the room. We have confidence in the room. You guys did it all season. If you bring a big piece or two, you're like, hey, you guys have been great, but now we're putting it over the top. Like there's a way to spin it, right? I personally like when the room stays as much as you can together. I go back to my second year in Philadelphia, and we traded Scotty Opshall away and brought in, I think it was Dan Carcillo that came in, but Scotty Opshall was such a big part of our locker room. He wasn't one of our best players. He wasn't Danny Briere. He wasn't Simon Gagne. He wasn't Kimmo Timonen. He wasn't Mike Richard, Jeff Carter. He wasn't those guys, but he was in the room. He was a big part of the chemistry, the vibes, and all of that. And that's something people didn't see. So when they traded Opshall, they're like, okay, well, you traded a player that's got 12 goals, whatever, right? But inside our room, we knew, this is not a good thing. So I feel chemistry is important. And when I watch the Jets, I can see chemistry. So I think the playoffs are going to tell if you made the right decision or not. But I think this is a pretty good standard for what the Jets should be and what they want to accomplish.
Marty, I know you got to go right away, but hopefully we can just ask a couple more questions.
I got
here.
5 minutes. 6 minutes, I'm good.
Okay, right on.
It's raining right now. I got to wait until it stops raining so I can beeline into the studio.
Yeah, well, we would take that rain because it's still very, very cold up here in Winnipeg. Unfortunately, a little bit nicer, but it was like -20 yesterday, Marty. But it's at the end of the day, it's Winnipeg. What do you expect in March, right? You can't expect nice weather. We don't get nice things here until April.
I love Winnipeg. I thought my family's all in Quebec City, and yesterday, my niece was doing she does the aerials jump or whatever, and she had the Canadian Juniors Championship or whatnot. And I look at the video, and there's still so much snow. I'm like, I'm thinking of cutting my grass next week. No, but still, like, I love the snow. I love the cold. I don't like the rain, and it gets all yucky.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Quebec City, I haven't been there since I was like 15 or 16. That's a beautiful city. Hopefully I can get back there one day. But my question was about Jack Quinn, because obviously I think there's a lot of similarities. I mean, Quinn was almost a Winnipeg Jet, right? He was taking 2 spots before Cole Perfetti in that 2020 draft. And you were mentioning a lot of guys having career years, right? Whether it's Ryan McLeod or other players. But what have you kind of seen from Jack Quinn? Because every time I watch him play, and I'll admit I don't watch the Sabres definitely as much as you do, or as much as I watch the Jets, but you can see that the tools are there for him to be an elite player in the league.
Yeah. So, the Achilles injury a summer and a half ago, like it was unfortunate. It took him a while to come back. And then last year was injury after injury. So the one thing I'm waiting to see for Jack Quinn is the speed of execution, the speed of making decisions. He's got all the tools. He's got a great shot. He's got great hands, great hockey sense. He's just not playing at the speed that I think he was 2 years ago when he, Cousins, and Peterka were on the line, and they were fun to watch. They were like, so that's the biggest thing. When Jack Quinn moves the puck quickly, when Jack Quinn shoots the puck quickly, when Jack Quinn gets involved in all aspects of the game, he's really good. But there has been kind of a delay. Like, he gets the puck, it's like, one Mississippi, what do I do with it? Like, okay, now that's too late. You're done. You don't have a play anymore. So that's the biggest thing. He's still young, still has a lot of talent. I think, they traded Dylan Cousins, so where are the Sabres going to go? Like, they're really focusing on veterans right now. Jordan Greenway got the 2-year extension. Jason Zucker got the 2-year extension. Alex Tuck is a big, I don't want to say mentor, but a leader for this team. So are they going to go more in that route and then, kind of make some moves, trading some young players? Or do they still want to give a Jack Quinn and an Owen Power a little bit of time to develop? We've seen some great things out of them, but we've also seen some things that are like, I want more.
Marty, I'll get the last one in then. I guess in terms of, we talk about that 4 Nations snub and what that did for players on the Jets and, even guys who were there, Kyle Connor doesn't play in the final game, what that kind of lit a fire. Do you think that did something for Tage Thompson, the way he was kind of left off the team?
I think I think everybody understands that Tage Thompson, Cole Caulfield, Scheifele with Team Canada, Kyle Connor should not have been a healthy scratch in the finals. There's a lot of players that are playing with that edge and that chip on their shoulders, and that's great. But right now, you're March 22nd. I don't think that Kyle Connor, Scheifele, Thompson, Caulfield, and others are thinking, man, I should have been on that 4 Nations team. I think they're thinking, how do I get onto the Olympic team?
Yeah.
And that is the looking ahead that I like personally. Like, whatever's done is done. You can't do anything about it. How do you move forward? And some guys get so, pouty and they don't play well because they look back. No, look ahead. In a year from now, you'll have had the experience of the Olympics, but you got to do it now. You got to play well now. And I think there's a huge motivating factor for a lot of these players that saw what happened and know there's an opening. Like, I think Scheifele, it's different because Team Canada, they won and they're really deep in the middle of the ice. But for Connor, for Caulfield, for Thompson, they can see, well, there's some guys on Team USA that won't be there next year. I am going to be there. That's a big difference.
The Buffalo Sabres and the Winnipeg Jets tomorrow afternoon in Winnipeg. But before that, the Sabres and the Wild this afternoon in St. Paul. Marty Biron will have coverage of all of that, and he's always welcome and a good friend of ours here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Marty, I hope the rain stopped. Thanks so much for joining us, squeezing us in this morning in between all your other duties.
I'll run fast. I'll run really fast.
Okay, there you go. We'll let you do that. Thanks, Marty.
Thanks, Marty.
Time. We'll get together again soon. There he goes, Marty Biron. Always great to catch up with Marty. He's been so nice to us, been so good to us for so many years. Great to have him join us to talk about the Jets, talk about the Sabres, talk about goaltending, talk about everything under the sun here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With that in mind, we'll go to our final break. When we come back, Ezzy, we'll keep the conversation going. We were asking about Tanev versus Iafallo versus Appleton. Dave opined. I want you to opine next on the other side of these commercial messages. One final segment to come on this Saturday morning edition. Don't go anywhere. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show presented by Play Now.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
Our local Boston Pizza is the Boston Pizza on Taylor Avenue. We'll next be there on April the 10th. That is for the rematch of the Jets and the Dallas Stars. So we're looking forward to that edition of the Illegal Curve post-game show and watch party live on location. Boston Pizza on Taylor Avenue. Of course, we will also be live at City Place throughout the playoffs. More information along those lines still to come, so stick with us. We'll give you all those details as we go. Also want to say a big thank you to Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Holt Dental, and Seagrows for their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. I'll do the big long read in about 10 minutes time, but I want to throw that in because all of our sponsors deserve the DAP for supporting us and being a huge part of what we do.
And Drew, you just mentioned Rumors. Sorry, I was going to say we're only a few weeks away from that ICOT pool firing up again.
That's true. It's true. That'll come playoff time. That is, of course, sponsored and presented by our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club. Anytime a game doesn't only involve the Jets, but anytime a playoff game goes to overtime, we fire up the hashtag ICOT pool and give away tickets to our friends at Rumors Comedy Club.
Unless Drew's sleeping, and then sometimes it for the later games. The games out west, Drew tends to forget those ones.
I sleep my beauty sleep. You do those games. Nothing gets in the way of my my beauty sleep. That's
Yeah.
very important.
My favorite is when Dave fires it up. It's like, midnight or 12:30, and that's my favorite. When I know that Mindell has gone for his little cat nap.
No chance I'm still awake at that point in time. Not a chance. My beauty sleep. Look, the mustache needs the sleep to stay at its bushiness. Yeah. So it's all about the mustache.
But thank you to Vicious for do we read the comment here from Vicious,
yes,
and then we'll get into the segment.
He knows what we needed was two big, fast defensemen and a big, fast second line center. He likes Coughlin. Summer trades are coming. That's what Vicious has to say. Appreciate him and his contributions to our financial well-being. So, Ezzy, the same question I asked Dave.
It's a couple tall boys for me right there, boys.
Somehow all the money goes to Ginsburg. I'm not sure exactly how that's working.
I've set it up. I've set the account up to funnel them all to my checking account.
There you go. Perfect. Same question. I asked Dave about the 3 pending unrestricted free agents who play in the bottom 6 of the Winnipeg Jets forward lines. Iafallo, Appleton, Tanev. I mean, you look at the age-wise. Tanev is the old veteran. He's 33. Iafallo's 31. Appleton's 29. 1, 2, 3. Rank them. Who do you think the Jets bring back, if any, of the 3, and how many of the 3?
Yeah, I think it's a great question that it's funny, Drew. It's like you were reading my mind because I was, like I said, I was going to message you guys, yesterday or a couple days ago.
Your phone number's blocked on my phone, so
it's true. Anyways. Yeah, I've tried to send some carrier pigeons, but also they can't get into your expansive property.
Them, that's the problem.
Exactly, the possums or that electric,
the opossums,
12-foot electric fence that Drew has around his property.
That you didn't know you could get a possum as a gargoyle. I have gargoyles. It's it's like Hogwarts. You can't get into Hogwarts unless you get the invitation.
I love it. But I think it's worth talking about, boys, especially with the way Tanev and Iafallo have played on that fourth line, right? We've obviously seen them elevated to the Lowry line. We saw that briefly. We were wondering if we might see a little bit more of that. I wouldn't be surprised, by the way, if there's a little mix and matching amongst those third and fourth line guys. I think Mason Appleton, just starting with him, I think he's the obvious 3, right? Guys like, offensively, we know he's limited, but I think what you've seen a little bit is he's a bit of a defensive liability. And again, I'm a fan of Appleton in terms of I think he's been a loyal soldier in the Jets' bottom 6. But, you have to also factor in, guys, what's coming through the pipe, right? Nikita Chibrikov is where my mind goes eventually, right, Dave? Nikita Chibrikov, as we know, he's not playing right now for the Manitoba Moose. He's injured, right? But he's a guy that I look at and I'm saying next year, he's a guy that you could plug in on your third or fourth line easily, right? So I think that
Ari Gustafsson.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, right, Drew? Right now, Rasmus Kupari and David Gustafsson aren't in the lineup, mainly because of the Brandon Tanev acquisition, but also because the Jets are fully healthy right now at forward, right? They've only got the one Pionk injury, right? So going back to your original question, though, I think, if the money is right, I think I'm signing, or I think the Jets could sign both Iafallo and Tanev, right? Iafallo is coming off $4 million a year. I don't know if you're giving him $4 million a year. I mean, I haven't crunched numbers. Does he get a similar amount? Does he get a little bit less? I'm not sure. But like we said, most likely you're signing to what, 2 years, 3 years? And as Drew mentioned, Tanev's a little bit older. So most likely you're looking at a 1 or 2 year deal for Brandon Tanev, right? Maybe 3. But these guys aren't going to cost you a lot of money when you factor in the cap going up and the fact that the Jets are going to have that cap space, right? There's other guys that we know they have to sign, right? Dylan Sandberg, pending RFA. Neil Pionk, he's a pending UFA. There's other guys.
Gabriel Velarde,
pending RFA. So the reality is, Dave, the Jets aren't going to sign every single one of the players that I just mentioned, right? It's just not going to happen. I mean, obviously it could happen, but it's unlikely that it'll happen when you consider there's turnover every single year. And there's always guys that the Jets are hoping are going to fill these roles. Like we mentioned, I think Nikita Chibrikov, Dave, you know better than anybody. He's very highly regarded in the Jets organization. I think he's a guy that could play a full-time role for the Jets next year. Could he not?
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, but you also, as Drew mentioned, we also tend to forget David Gustafsson and Rasmus Kupari, 2 guys who we've
played the bulk of the year for the Jets.
Well, not only that, but Rasmus Kupari, we were all talking, he looked good at the third C role for, when they needed to move Adam Lowry up. So, I mean, to me, he'll be a big question mark for next year is what kind of step forward can Rasmus Kupari take? The organization obviously has a lot of faith in him. Nikita Chibrikov, again, he's been excellent. We saw what he's been able to do when he came up and played for the Jets, continuing his goal scoring prowess and he plays with that little bit of an edge. Parker Ford similarly also plays with an edge, and he, also similarly able to score. And
these guys are going to be on entry-level contracts.
Well, that's the other thing.
Right? Even though we're talking about, Dave, the cap going up, sorry, I want to go back to you, but I think all of these things you have to factor in, right? It's not that the Jets don't like Appleton, because obviously they brought him back for a second tour. It's that you have other players in the organization who will be less expensive.
Yeah. I mean,
and could provide even better play.
It's not that you don't accumulate a team of guys who are really good and you like, and they're all nice guys and it's great. And it's, it's camp. I mean, the fact of the matter is that at a certain point, I mean, look, the Jets cannot afford to be Kelly McCrimmon in Vegas and be ruthless, because, for every guy you get rid of, 10 other guys want to take his spot. But the fact of the matter is you also have to be able to make tough decisions. And one of those decisions is, you also don't want to block kids that are coming up in the system. So could Nikita Chibrikov take that jump? Could Parker Ford? Remember, 2 years ago, people wanted Parker Ford to be the 13th forward. So you've got Kupari, who's potentially able to jump in there, and it's going to be for a lot less money, and which allows you, of course, to spend more money on guys like Sandberg, more money on Gabe Velarde. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's where you have to make those tough cuts. Like I said, I don't think there is. I agree with the comment that you don't have anyone like a Brandon Tanev. You don't want to be buying up too many of his next few years, but you don't have that type. So to me, again, Iafallo, especially because he wants to stay on the team, and he brings an element that I don't think you quite have with anybody else, and potentially Tanev as well. So those two of the three for sure I could see bringing back, but for sure I would guess Iafallo is back next year with the Jets. I don't think Appleton's back, and to me Tanev is a bit of a toss-up.
Well, it'll certainly be a topic of conversation and something to keep an eye on. Well, maybe not so much come playoff time. It'll be interesting to see if the Jets decide to try and get one of them under contract between now and the end of the regular season. We had heard that there may have been some movement on Neil Pionk. Our friend Murat said something along those lines, but that seems to have fizzled as of late. And we heard Alex Iafallo express interest in re-signing here in Winnipeg as well, in that article he wrote, or that was written by our buddy Ken Weeb.
Got to give Chuck R a little shout out. This is a very funny comment. He said Rasmus Kupari. He didn't say Rasmus, but Rasmus Kupari is the Alexander Burmistrov of James Wright. This is a very good comment.
I haven't heard that name in a while. Like James Wright, you're talking about, was that the first Jets season or maybe the second Jets season?
Yeah.
That's going way back.
You guys had spent the post-game show on Thursday going through some old Jets players.
That was a good one.
I think we'll leave it at that there now before we get too deep down the rabbit hole. We'll remind everybody that we're next in action tomorrow afternoon, right around 4:45 p.m. After the Jets and the Sabres, the Illegal Curve post-game show will come your way. We'll recap everything that goes on in the course of tomorrow afternoon's contest. If you haven't already done so tonight, be sure to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn your notifications on, so that whenever we go live here on the Illegal Curve YouTube channel, you get alerted so that you can come and join us, just as so many of you did all this Saturday morning. We appreciate the love. We appreciate the support. We appreciate the likes when you smash the like button as well. Big thank you to Marty Biron. Big thank you to Dan Robertson for joining us this morning on the program. Those two fine gentlemen did a great job. In case you missed either of those interviews, the immediate replay is available on the YouTube channel, and the podcast will be available for download coming up shortly after we hit the end stream button.
Oh, sorry, Drew, just wanted to mention one thing here.
Put on your antlers. It's time for the Minuk Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Attaboy, Ezzy.
I have a swimming obligation to get to with the kids. Can you be
go.
real quick, Dave? Real quick.
All, Drew, I just was gonna say it's
Drew,
not.
Don't get your Speedo in a knot, okay?
You got to remember, it's only we've only been alive for an hour and 58 minutes. I mean, this is a 2-hour show. We have an obligation to our sponsors and the fans who join us for 2 hours, not an hour and 58 minutes. So the Moose, I will quickly get to.
Is it wrong that I'm picturing Drew swimming the front crawl right now in a Speedo?
Yes.
I'm not the one swimming. My kids are swimming. I'm not the one swimming.
Anyways, I'll just get to it quickly. The Moose were playing a great game against the Abbotsford Canucks. Moose have to, they were going into yesterday's game 9 points back of Rockford with 2 games against the Ice Hogs coming up next weekend. So there was some chance they could sweep that, but it was remote. They were 9 points out of the playoffs. Didn't look likely. They needed to probably sweep the Canucks this weekend. We've hooked some folks up with tickets for both last night's game and tonight's game. Not to Dan Robertson. I would have given him tickets if he wanted, but he didn't ask. So anyways, the Moose were in action yesterday, controlling the play, boys, for the first 12 minutes of that game. It was 5-1 shots, and then out of nowhere, 2 breakdowns, back of the net in 26 seconds. The Moose are suddenly down 2-0. And then Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, who, by the way, we were joking with him. We were doing media earlier in the day, and he was talking about how many interviews he's done. And we weren't officially doing one. It was more of an informal chit-chat. And then he goes out and he scores. And I said, well, see, this is what you got to do. Talk to the media, and it leads to goals.
It's the Minuk bump right there, Dave. That's what
it was, a Minuk bump. Minuk informal bump as. So that made it a 2-1 game. And then just to sum up the season for the Moose, nothing is better. They're literally announcing the goal by Fjällby. The Moose go down. The Canucks goaltender, Topatillo, is out of the net. There's a chance to put it into the empty net. They don't. They put it off the post. I mean, it's just crazy chaos. The Canucks come back and score. So in 2 minutes and 23 seconds, 3 goals for the Canucks, 1 goal for the Moose. Actually, Jonsson-Fjällby scored 1 more to make it a 3-2 game, but the Moose took a late penalty and gave up power play goals. So unfortunately for the Moose, I'm not saying it was a kiss of death, but it's not looking good for the Manitoba Moose. They're back in action tonight, and we'll play against the Canucks. So we'll hopefully have some insight on that one come the next time we talk with all you fine folks.
There you go. That'll be tomorrow afternoon after the Jets and the Sabres, where I'll have more time so we can talk deeper and in more detail about the Manitoba Moose. Big thank you to everybody for joining us this morning. Big thank you to our sponsors, our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Play Now, Holt Dental, Boston Pizza, City Place, and Seagram's. Support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. The Jets are hitting the ice for practice. The full practice recap will be available on illegalcurve.com. We'll see everybody tomorrow afternoon for the Illegal Curve post-game show. For Dave Minuk, for Ezra Ginsburg,
have a great swim, Drew.
Thank you. Have a great Saturday. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.